Hi, my name is North Yorkshire and I'm a professional sim racer for G2 Esports. Overall, there's huge debate in sim racing whether or not hardware can make you faster. I don't think in particular if you have the talent, the hardware will make you shine or put you at the back of the field. In the past 2 decades, sim racing equipment has made a major leap. Of course, we were taking deeper takes onto pedals, racing wheels, PCs, and of course monitors as well. In particular, the monitor in sim racing is like one of the few connections you have to the car. Everything is perceived visually in the first place, and therefore it's really important to have high frame rates, low response rates of the monitor, because this gives you a competitive advantage in the end and makes it easier for you to perceive what the car is doing.
The inside of Coates.
Parker gets too heavily involved.
And that's Whitehead and Coates.
Races 9 and 10 in the MSL FastR Touring Car eSeries with PowerMax Racing, powered by VRRC. Welcome to Croft, everybody. David Addison and Andy McEwan trackside as we start to get towards the pointy end of a championship that is very much, in football parlance, one of two halves. What we thought we had going to Snetterton, a Mike Epps dominated championship, has turned around into something very different, with Callum Newsham now the championship leader by a point from Dave Marshall. One of the reasons being that Mike Epps had a dreadful time a week ago at Snetterton. Internet disconnected in the first race. He didn't finish that, of course, and he couldn't get himself into the second. The other reason the championship looks so different is that Callum Newsham had his day of days, because he so nearly won on the road in race 1. He definitely won on the road in race 2. And then in the week, got the win in race 1 because Charlie Oliver, who'd been the first over the line, got a 1-second penalty for causing a collision. That dropped him behind Callum, so it was a double win for Callum Newsham, and that catapults him to the lead of the championship. Free practice almost at an end. We have qualifying for 15 minutes and then our two 20-minute plus 1 lap races around this 2.1 mile long circuit. And on the evidence of what we've had thus far in the championship, Andy, this is, as ever, going to be very lively indeed.
Yeah, thank you, David. It's been a fantastic season so far, but as you say, everything we thought we were kind of expecting for the second half of the season has kind of gone out the window now. Look at how tight it is. Callum Newsham just 1 point now ahead of Dave Marshall, who's kind of been the most consistent driver of the season. He always seems to be either second or third in the points going into each weekend. Jack Keithley and Charlie Oliver joint third. Charlie hadn't scored a single point after the first 2 races at Brands Hatch, and here he is joint third place in the championship. And the top 10 drivers, David, are all within 1 race win of the lead. There are 21 points available in each race, 20 for a win, 1 for fastest lap. So it is still well and truly wide open. There are drivers who we haven't necessarily even spoken about much this year who could have a Callum Newsham sort of day today and buy right back into it.
Dave Marshall, you're right, has been consistent, and he's one of the few drivers not to have any points penalty. Callum Newsham has a 1-point penalty, but Jack Keithley and Charlie Oliver, they've lost 6 championship points because of incidents and therefore penalties in previous rounds. So if they hadn't had those, they'd be ahead in the championship. Give them those 6 points back. It would look different again, but I know it's all ifs and maybes. Croft today, Silverstone's national circuit next week, then the international circuit a week after, and on the 20th of March, the showdown on the Grand Prix circuit at Brands Hatch. So Mike Epps comes here now, having fallen way back to 7th in the standings. He has had a decent day thus far, as has Dave Marshall, in fact, because they're also racing in the Mini eSeries and have won their respective classes in the championship. Sim class for Dave Marshall, the real world class for Mike Epps. And now they regroup to go touring car racing. Also, for the first time in a good few weeks, and Mike Epps gets rid of quite a lot of success ballast, doesn't he? Because he's now only got to lug 27 kilos around.
Yes, compared with the 75 kilos that he's been stuck with for most of the season, he's definitely going to notice that. Remember, Mike told us earlier on this season, I think at the second round at Donington Park, that carrying the weight in the sim seems to almost affect the car more than it does in real life, and so that has definitely held him back, I think. Alton Park, he really seemed to struggle. Obviously, bad luck at Snetterton, but he wasn't exactly setting the pace there either. So coming to another tight, twisty circuit with lots of big braking points and big acceleration zones, shedding all of that weight might lead to a revitalised Mike Epps. Certainly based on his practice times, that seems to be the case.
Indeed, because he's currently the quickest within the session from Dave Newsham and Dan Zelos. Now, something else we just need to tick off the list of points. We've got an extra car this weekend and another new driver, and that is the AOC Gaming entry of Max Coates. Now, this is the guest car. AOC, big supporters of the championship, and to reflect that involvement, we get this extra Hyundai for the AOC Gaming brand. Max Coates at the wheel of it, but he is not going to score points. So there's something else you've got to factor into all of this, that wherever Max is in the order, those behind him move up a place for the purposes of scoring points. He doesn't want to get in the way of people fighting for the championship, but equally, Max is a very competitive racer, and I think he's going to be one to watch. That said, he gets the dreaded first time out 45 kilos of weight, doesn't he, today?
Yeah, although that didn't seem to hold back Dan Zelos too much a week ago at Snetterton. He was in the points in both races, so there is Max, who looks like he's concentrating rather there on either practicing or possibly navigating the loading screens. But Max, this of course his home track, so he should know Croft fairly well, and does tend to go quite well around here. So yeah, be interesting to see how he gets on. That weight will definitely affect things slightly, but he's a real racer, is Max.
Yes.
I'm sure he will move forward in the races.
Indeed, yes. If you go right out of the main gate at Croft, you'll go towards Scorton, which is where the Coates family garage is on the left-hand side. You can't miss it, so very much his local circuit. Right, let's have a look at this track, though, in a little bit more detail. Dave Newsham is your guide.
Hi, Dave Newsham here, and I'm going to take you on a hot lap of Croft. Start and finish straight here, going through the gears. I'm up to 5th already, but I'm just going to leave it there and pop the limiter for a second, step on the brakes, try and keep as much speed through here as I can. Stay in 4th gear, feed the throttle in around here. The chicane's dead easy, the tyre stacks are well back off the circuit. And somebody's definitely been out with the chainsaw down here. This was all full of trees last time I raced down here. And into Tower, that used to be an awesome corner, that, but I used to love it. But there's a nasty bump there now on this. Through the S's. Shortcutting them as much as I can. Dead easy, wasn't that easy in my day. Sunny in, always tricky to brake. Into there as you corner as well. Sunny out. Down to 5th. Bit of camber there, so you carry quite a bit of speed through there. Try to keep it tight through there. 3rd gear. Back down to 3rd again into what is probably the tightest corner in British motorsport, and we'll cross the line, and that's a lap of Croft.
So that is how you tackle a lap of Croft. Now let's see how everybody else tackles Croft in qualifying. Quick word about ballast then. Callum Newsham carries 75 kilos. It's championship weight. You carry it for both races. Dave Marshall therefore has 66. Jack Keithley 57. Charlie Oliver 48. Jordan Brennan 39. Rob Butler 33. Mike Epps 27 kilos. Robbie Stapleford 21. 15 for Max Goff. 9 for Senna Proctor. And 45 first time out ballast for Max Coates. We've had a different pole position driver for every qualifying session thus far. Can we maintain that 100% record? One driver who seems to be desperately short of good luck, at least, is Max Bird. The pace always seems to be there, but Andy, the results don't come, do they?
Yeah, he's had that one podium, hasn't he, back at Alton Park, 2nd place in the first race at Alton, but then a pointless outing at Snetterton a week ago. And yeah, it's a shame because Max has, as you said, had the speed to contend for race wins. He currently sits 12th place in the championship, which ordinarily you'd say would mean that he's pretty much out of it, but given the way that things keep chopping and changing this season, I wouldn't necessarily write him off just yet, but you feel this is a bit of a make or break weekend for him, really. He was 9th fastest in practice with a time that was less than half a second off the fastest time, which was set by Mike Epps. So looks as though he's pretty close to the pace again today, just trying to gradually ease his way into this session with a slightly slow start to this next lap. The car behind him, though, which I think is Dave Newsham, not easing himself in at all, straight away with a 1 minute 22.7. There's only a couple of tenths off what he did in practice, so drivers immediately, some drivers at least, immediately getting themselves up to speed.
Yes, Dave Newsham was the quickest. Now Rob Butler goes top. He's been a race winner, don't forget, this year in that second race at Brands Hatch, the reverse grid race there. Mike Epps, though, now goes top by a sort of James Bond margin, 0.007 from Rob Butler. So 7 thousandths between Epps and Butler. Newsham third ahead of Jack McIntyre, Isaac Smith, another double winner, fifth, and sixth at the moment, the Power Max Racing entry of Alex Toth-Jones, perhaps showing better pace than previous events, but that said, there's still 11 minutes of the session to go. Mick Sutton, you're riding with on the inset, look at all of his screens there, giving him proper vision on the run down towards the right-hander of Tower, where it's very easy to run wide and find yourself in the weeds. Gets away with that, does rattle over the curb a little bit. He is 18th quickest at the moment.
Yeah, didn't make friends with the apex there at Tower Corner, but difficult to get the car stopped there. It's a very bumpy braking zone, and if you're even a fraction too late, it's easy to lock up the front brakes, and as you say, end up off in the farmer's field, and that's what happens when you lock the rear brakes going into sunny in, the car snapping sideways. That rather spoils that lap for him, even. Martin Richards here in the Peugeot, yet to set a representative lap time, and makes good friends with Stuart Lyons there, who I think in his own way was trying to stay out of the way, and they still ended up trading a bit of paint. Martin goes on to another lap. I doubt this will be a significant improvement, but we'll see as he crosses the line. Well, it is his first proper lap time, if you like. He's within a second of pole position now and moves up to 18th place.
Behind the championship leader, Callum Newsham is 17th at the moment. Epps, Butler, Newsham Senior, Toth-Jones, McIntyre, Smith is the top 10. Martin Richards was probably a good choice after seeing people go sideways, because he is the drift king, and would like to see him in real world cars on circuits perhaps this year. It might well happen. But Mike Epps remaining the fastest. James Merrills is 23rd, although behind him in the times actually Stuart Lyons and I think possibly Cat Impey. Max Coates only 21st, bit of a surprise. That's Jack McIntyre hard at work, number 37, 5th quickest. Now he came into the championship new a week ago, therefore significantly for this event he's got rid of the weight, hasn't he?
Yeah, and a bit like Zelos, he was able to score points on his debut, even with that weight. He scored 4 points for a 12th place finish in race 2, which doesn't sound all that exciting, but it was a solid run. He stayed out of trouble, didn't get involved in too many incidents, and now here he is with a significantly lighter car, bang on the pace, and look at that, as if to prove the point, Dan Zelos goes just ahead of him, almost a 10th quicker than McIntyre. They are 5th and 6th now, Zelos just ahead of McIntyre. Those two drivers really looking now to prove what they can do. And we see this from drivers in things like the British Touring Car Championship, don't we, where they arrive mid-season, they just need to survive that first weekend, stay out of trouble, and then the next round, when they get rid of that 45 kilos, they can then really be unleashed and show what they can do. That's exactly what Mike Epps is doing. You lose the weight, and immediately you see Mike Epps in this Peugeot back at the top of the times. That fastest time at the moment, as you said, only just quicker than Rob Butler right now. But this is the Mike Epps of old, isn't it? Look, he's even almost got a bit of a smile on his face there.
Except he got it wrong going into the hairpin, so he caught himself out there, went very, very deep into the hairpin, up towards the timing line now, almost at the halfway point in the session, so Mike Epps goes through. He's had a successful day thus far in the Mini E-Series, goes over the timing line, a 1:22.596. His best. That was a start-up lap, effectively over 3 minutes, that lap. So now Mike Epps has got the road to himself. Much underrated racer is Mike. Single-seaters and tin-top success before he came into the British Touring Car Championship, but now carving a very good niche for himself in terms of driver coaching and as an esports racer. I think he'd quite like to be on real-world grids, but he's a proper talent, and we never really saw the best of him when he had his spell in the British Touring Car Championship. But you underrate him at your peril, as everybody on this grid is starting starting to realise.
Yeah, Mike is a decent bloke as well, and as you said, there's a lot of driver tuition with young drivers, but not only in the real world, but also sim racing. It's one of the things that I certainly only became aware of during the last 12 to 18 months or so, but professional drivers who, of course, haven't been able to go out onto the real racetracks and give one-on-one driver tuition have been able to turn to sim racing, and apparently there are people who are willing to pay you for a day's training session on a sim, such as Assetto Corsa, for example. So Mike, I believe, has been getting involved in a lot of that too, which rather proves that he's pretty handy not only in the real world, but in the sim. We shouldn't really doubt that. He's been the pace setter, as you said, for much of this season, continues to be so in this session, now by a more significant margin. That was a new personal best and the fastest lap of the day at 1:22.436. That's a tenth and a half faster than he managed in practice.
With Rob Butler second then. There is Charlie Oliver, very unlucky in a sense not to win that first race at Snetterton. He did it on the track, but a push gave him a penalty. Andy Ringland, the clerk of the course, looks at all these incidents during the week, and the penalty came, so Charlie Oliver dropped back behind Callum Newsham. He comes here with 48 kilos on board, 5 fastest race laps to his name, so we know he's got good pace ordinarily. Right now though, only 21st, and I'm hoping as well we can have a quick look at Max Coates, because Max seems to be another one that's struggling a bit at the moment. You've got to go to 24th to find the local hero, as it were. Max, big enthusiast of sim racing and of this championship, and indeed of this circuit. There he goes in a completely unliveried car, but Max Coates, who is shown there as being number 74. Well, actually, Rob Butler is 74. 71 is Max's normal number. Comes up towards the hairpin, but right now he seems to be struggling a bit with this, doesn't he?
Yeah, he only did 4 laps in practice, so I don't know whether he had some issues getting connected. I know obviously he's also busy with the mini eSeries, and he's working behind the scenes on both series with some of the media information that he provides to us, for example, things like driver information sheets and whatnot, which we're very grateful for. So a busy man is Max Coates, and possibly that's starting to tell. So having only completed 4 laps, and he's got to get to grips with the weight as well, that certainly won't be helping him, I would say. Charlie Oliver, though, comes through and does manage to go quicker now than he's gone so far, up into 13th, which is a bit more like it, but yeah, I don't know, he could do with being a bit further forward, couldn't he, if he's to keep this championship momentum going.
And the same is true for Jack Keithley, who is only 16th. Jack's had a bit of a yo-yo season, hasn't he? One session, one race, one day, good, and then not quite so consistent. He's there in the championship, you could argue, a little bit by default, with the likes of Mike Epps having problems, and he would be better placed were he to have those 6 penalty points back again. So he's there or thereabouts, but we keep saying it, he needs a good, consistent string of results across both races. Dave Newsham there going a bit deep into the hairpin, but survives it. But yes, Jack Keithley 16th, and I think heading for the pit lane. Jack, of course, like Charlie Oliver, in one of the Audis.
Yeah, Keithley, it was really Donington Park, wasn't it, where his season sort of came unravelled a bit. He scored pretty well across the other 3 meetings, but just 7 points across the 2 races at Donington. The first time, of course, that he carried weight, because I believe he went to Donington 2nd or 3rd in the points, didn't he, if memory serves. So perhaps now, as he's getting more used to it, he is starting to deal with that a little bit better, or as you say, a little off the pace for the time being. Dave Newsham has slipped down the order a little, 4th quickest at the moment for the man that was 2nd fastest in the free practice session. He was telling us a week ago not to mention him because he kept running into bad luck, but he has well and truly seized the limelight this weekend by setting strong pace and even guiding us around our virtual lap of the circuit. So hopefully Callum's successful weekend at Snetterton has shaken off some of the Newsham blues that the pair of them seem to be suffering from. Butler also looking pretty racy here, although can't get any closer to Mike Epps. That lap time that Mike set on his 2nd run, I think, David, is going to be tough to beat.
Yes, I'd go along with that. 3 minutes still to run of the session, but Mike Epps looking very, very strong indeed. Now, Rob Butler is the man most likely to then. He's only a 10th back. Rob Butler is chasing hard, but the trouble is he's got a bit of traffic around him on this lap. Jack McIntyre, though, also looking impressive. Jack McIntyre got himself up to 3rd fastest. You've got Dan Zelos 6th, but yes, it still would suggest that Mike Epps is going to be the strongest. There going through is Max Coates, who has gone back out. Whatever he's done on that pit stop, it's had a lick of paint. Now he's got his correct number on the side of the car, so he is 71, not 74, Rob Butler's number, and the AOC gaming livery has now been adorned, so that was a very slick stop, wasn't it, to get the paintbrush out?
Yeah, I don't know what the record is for fastest new livery pit stop, but yes, that's pretty impressive. Max Coates back out there in a very good-looking Hyundai i30N. It looks good in any colour, but blue in particular is a favourite of mine.
No bias there, is there?
2.1 seconds off the pace. Mine is white, unfortunately. It shows the dirt rather more than I'd like. But this particular car looking good. Not as quick as Max would like it to be at the moment, but this isn't necessarily such a Hyundai circuit either. These cars tend to go better on the more high-speed open circuits, which is why I think Callum Newsham was able to really show what he could do at Snetterton a week ago. Dave Newsham is the highest of the Hyundais at the moment in 4th position, just ahead of Dan Zelos, who's just jumped up into 5th position. He had slipped down the order a bit behind Alex Toth-Jones, who had improved recently. Dan now gets himself back into the top 5. I do think that Dan is going to be a threat today. If he can stay out of trouble, a podium is definitely on the cards.
You might well be right about that. Callum Newsham. Now, I know the Newsham fan club don't like us mentioning either of Callum nor Dave because it tends to bring bad luck, although I think they might have got away with it at Snetterton with Callum's 2 wins. However, right now, Junior is struggling, isn't he? He is way, way back 19th, which means he's going to have to get an Uber to the start line because he's that far back on the grid, and he's struggling with, seemingly, that 75 kilos of weight. So this, unless he can dig deep with really only one more lap in the session for him, Callum is going to find himself not only a long way back on the grid, but also potentially in jeopardy with cars around him, and incidents aplenty on those first few laps. So he's not looking like it's going to be a great day for him here.
I'm glad you said that, not me, but I would tend to agree with you. Remember, he is, as we've sort of made the point, carrying maximum ballast, but he's never carried maximum ballast before,
no.
And he wasn't carrying any ballast a week ago. So whereas some drivers are kind of gaining 9 or 18 kilos from one weekend to the other, he's gone from one extreme right to the other end. He's gone from 0 kilos to 75 kilos. It will feel like a completely different car. It won't feel like a car, it'll feel like a double-decker bus compared to the lightweight car that he was in a week ago. So that, I'm sure, is all playing a part in this, and you know, he's not that experienced carrying success ballast in real-world competition either, compared with some of the drivers that he's going up against. So steep learning curve, this.
I was going to be uncharitable and suggest that with all the weight, the Hyundai would feel like any other Hyundai i30, slow and ponderous. But you might not agree. You might not agree with me, Andy, as a proud owner of one, I know. But Callum, of course, we've seen as a star in real-world mini racing over the last couple of years, as well as in the mini eSeries last season as well. Now there is Jack Keithley, of whom we spoke a little while ago, in the VRRC colours, and the Williams eSports driver, touring car fan, delighted to be on this grid with real world touring car racers. And it is Mike Epps at the moment heading the real world class. Now where is Jack Keithley? Again, he's only 17th, and Dave Marshall, in fairness, another one struggling with the weight, so he is down in 15th. But this is one of the venues where that weight does make a big difference, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely, for the reasons that I mentioned earlier on. Anytime you've got lots of big braking zones, changes of direction, accelerating out of tight corners, I mean, this final sector must be pretty hellish when you're lugging around, 50, 60, 70 kilos. Kat Impey isn't lugging around that much weight, in fact no weight at all, but still manages to understeer wide out of the final hairpin, so she, along with many others, bails for the pit lane. I don't think anybody's still on a serious qualifying attempt here. Isaac Smith, in theory, could still improve, but I think he's seen the check, or he's about to see the checkered flag. So this, I think, David, is our grid for race 1.
Yes, provisionally then, Mike Epps will start from pole position, Rob Butler with him at the front, Jack McIntyre 3rd from Isaac Smith and Dave Newsham 5th, Dan Zelos 6th, good qualifying effort from Alex Toth-Jones to go 7th, ahead of Charlie Oliver, one to watch, Senna Proctor, another local driver if you like, 9th, Max Edmondson 10th ahead of Max Bird, David Ward 12th ahead of Robbie Stapleford, Max Goff a long way back 14th ahead of the cars that start to get heavier now, Dave Marshall's only 15th, Jordan Brennan next ahead of Jack Keithley and Martin Richards, championship leader Callum Newsham is 19th ahead of Stuart Lyons and then Kat Impey, James Merrill's 22nd from Max Coates, and then Mick Sutton way back 24th in the time. So that provisionally is how we're going to get the cars lined up ready for our first race. But that Mike Epps bloke has done it again, yet another impressive effort, and he's our first double pole getter of the season. Second pole for Mike Epps, and Andy is on his way to have a word with him.
Yeah, brilliant effort that from Mike, as you said, becomes the first double pole sitter of the season. Mike, that's a bit more like it, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, that was decent. Hold on a sec, someone else is in the ear.
Yes.
Yeah, no, that went well. I think after... let's not go into last weekend. What a disaster that was. PC crashing. I'm sat there just like, oh, brilliant. Everyone's going round and I'm just looking at the same corner for the next 5 minutes because my PC froze. So, yeah, to take the weight off and prove how quick you can go without it is quite nice today.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose that's the one positive you can take from that, is that you now shed all 75 of those kilos. It must feel like a completely different animal now.
Yeah, it does actually. Even with the 27, I noticed the difference because I've done some testing off server. Just because this morning we don't have a server to test on, I wanted to get on a bit earlier. And I forgot to put the ballast in. And I was thinking, why am I 2 or 3 tenths quicker all of a sudden? And I thought, well, blimey, okay, I forgot to put the ballast in. So it makes such a big difference on this game. And I think Rich probably won't like me saying this, but I don't know. I think it does the front guys a little bit of a disservice because it's such a disadvantage that guys can be right at the front on pole, making visible errors on track. So I feel like it's a little bit over the mark, and it's almost, you almost don't bother trying when you got the weight on to a certain extent because you know you're going to be 16th or 17th anyway, so you may as well just see what happens in the race and battle it through. But we'll see. This is a slight change for me. Nice to be at the front, so I've got to bag every point I can today to get back in the championship.
Yeah, really important pair of races coming up, Mike. I'll let you get away and continue your preparations. Congratulations on the pole. Best of luck for the race.
Cheers, mate. Thank you.
Mike Epps then bags himself the pole position here at Croft. And David, that's a good place to be. It's not the easiest place to overtake. And Mike Epps is not the easiest person to overtake. So he's looking good for this first race of the day.
And it gets him out of strife, doesn't it? If he can make a good start, he can get ahead of the pack. Yes, he could well be in the pound seat. 27 kilos he will carry around. And in terms of other weight around him, well, Rob Butler alongside, he has got 33. Second row, Jack McIntyre, 0 weight. Isaac Smith, 0 weight. The third row, Dave Newsham, 0 weight. Dan Zelos, 0 weight on the third row. Alex Toft-Jones, 0. And then Charlie Oliver starting, 8th, 48 kilos. Senna Proctor next on 9. Max Edmondson, 10th on the grid, 0 weight. Max Bird, 0 weight next on the grid. Dave Ward is weight free. Robbie Stapleford next has 21. Max Goff alongside him has 15. And then you get to Dave Marshall with his 66, 39 kilos for Jordan Brennan alongside him, 57 for Jack Keithley. Martin Richards next, he's weight free. And Callum Newsham then starting 19th on the grid with those 75 kilos of weight. He's got Stuart Lyons alongside him ahead of Cat Impey and James Merrills. Max Coates, 45 as a newcomer. No weight for Mick Sutton or Kenny Press that will round out the grid. So there, the grid is set, ready to go. It is a 2x2 grid rather than a 1x1 stagger that we had at certain races earlier on in the season. Mike Epps and Rob Butler then on pole, on the front row, I should say, pole for Mike Epps on the inside line. The grid is formed. Remember, 20 minutes plus 1 lap. So everybody is set, ready to go. Do we have time to quickly pick a winner? Is Mike Epps going to run away with this? What do you think, Andy?
It's hard to bet against him, isn't it? I'm more interested to see who joins him on the podium. Jack McIntyre, Dan Zelos, Alex Toft-Jones, all looking for that first podium of the season. It's going to be a good one, this.
It is. You've got 2 drivers then on the front row that have had wins. 2 to Mike Epps, 1 to Rob Butler. Lights go red then. It is round 9 of the championship. When the lights go out, we will be racing now. Good getaway by Mike Epps, but Rob Butler tries to out-drag him on the way down towards the first corner in the slightly heavier car, but Mike Epps has got the inside line. Rob Butler on the outside, breaks late. Can he go all the way around the outside at Clairvaux? He tries it, he gets run out wide. Mike Epps takes the race lead. Isaac Smith gets up the inside of Butler, who gets all sideways. There was definite contact there. And out of it all, not only has Isaac Smith gone second, but Mike Epps has gone away because he has benefited from all of the carnage going on behind him. They've all got through the chicane somehow, Andy. They're all still going, but Mike Epps has checked out.
Great opportunistic driving that through. Oh, Isaac Smith has contacted the pack. How on earth was that not an enormous accident? Was that Zelos? It was, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Dan Zelos got turned sideways in the braking zone and was hit heading towards the lead bunch, completely out of control. That was a very, very lucky escape. But yeah, Isaac Smith took full advantage there of Butler and Epps going wheel to wheel into turn one. Genuinely, the sort of gentleman's agreement is that the car on the inside typically gets into the first corner first and stays there. But Rob Butler, knowing how important the points could be this weekend and knowing how important it could be to get ahead of Mike Epps, he fought it out. Contact was made between the two Peugeots, and Isaac saw a gap on the inside and went for it. He's up to second place.
And Callum Newsham is on his toes in the inset picture there. He was trying to gain ground. He will have done so by the end of the lap as Rob Butler comes under attack from Newsham Senior. So at the end of lap one then, Mike Epps leads the way over a second to the good ahead of Isaac Smith. Jack McIntyre is third. Down to fourth then, Rob Butler. Dave Newsham goes through fifth. Sixth is Senna Proctor. Max Bird seventh ahead of Alex Toth Jones, Max Goff and Robbie Stafel third. Where is Callum Newsham? He's gained only 2 places, up to 17th, so this could be quite a long 20 minutes for him as there Jack Keithley goes down towards Clairvaux. And more fun and games involving Cat Impey as well, so more cars off the road. But that's at Clairvaux, and they recover, albeit somewhat delayed. Mike Epps then storming away up the road up front.
Yeah, Cat Impey, she clobbered the tyre stack on the inside at Clairvaux, and unfortunately Jack Keithley was the next car behind us, so sort of ran into her. Keithley 22nd, that is not where he wants to be. He's really starting to slip back in the points a bit now. Alex Toth Jones here in 8th position, right behind Senna Proctor, so Alex more or less held ground from the start. Dan Zelos fell a lot further back than he should have been, so there are 2 of my tips for the podium already in strive. But Jack McIntyre running well in 3rd place. He, though, could become a bit of a cork in the bottle here. You can see just ahead of this group that McIntyre has Rob Butler and Dave Newsham right on his tail, and then you've got the 4-car group they're following here. Max Bird, Senna Proctor, the 2 Hondas, Peugeot of Toth Jones, and then the other Peugeot of Max Goff behind him. You get this situation quite a lot here at Croft. If one car starts defending, it really costs you time. Bunches up the whole group behind. Generates good racing, but not great for lap times.
Bear in mind, though, that Jack McIntyre in that 3rd place is the leading sim racer. Mike Epps, Isaac Smith constitute real-world racers. So Jack McIntyre is the leading sim. He's 4 times a sim race champion. He was the runner-up in the Mini eSeries last year. So will he be a cork in the bottle, or will his sim experience enable him to shake off the Butler-Newsham battle? Well, they are together as they run up towards Tower. Rob Butler trying to attack, trying to defend at the same time there. But if anything, I reckon he's going to have to think more about sticking out his elbows to stop Newsham getting by than he is attacking Jack Mack for 3rd place. Bird, Proctor, Toth Jones 6th, 7th and 8th. Good battle going on there as Senna Proctor tries to get himself up past Max Bird. Good scrap that going on, as I say, between the 3 of them, being caught as well by Max Goff and Jordan Brannan.
Yeah, I was about to say, we've got 2 Hondas and 2 Peugeots about to be joined by 2 VWs, because the Golfs are definitely closing, and there's quite a lot of grouping going on here. Certain cars seem to have certain pace that most of the drivers are able to get out of them. On board with Dave Newsham in 5th position through this complex. Good overtaking opportunity here into the hairpin if you're brave, but it's pretty much full lock in a front-wheel drive touring car to get around here. Carry good speed into the corner. Butler was a bit wide, and the 2 very nearly met in the middle, but that is a place you can overtake. It usually involves a little bit of contact, casual contact we'll call it, but thankfully they avoided, I think, trading any paint on that occasion.
A word about Max Coates, by the way, because he's getting himself up the order. He's up into 19th place now. Dan Zelos, who was very nearly at Max's garage, so far off the road had he gone. He is 17th, creeping up the order. Top 15 for points. So Dave Marshall, 15th at the moment. He's only going to get, if things stay as they are, 1 solitary point out of this. Charlie Oliver, I think, was rather badly delayed on that first lap, because you'll find him way back in 14th as well. So it's a very jumbled order, as touring car racing tends to give, other than Mike Epps, who is driving away into the distance now. Even though Isaac Smith is ballast free, he can't do anything about catching him, can he? But look at 3rd place. McIntyre now is definitely getting away from Butler and Newsham.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. He is getting away, and I think catching Isaac Smith for 2nd place. That gap was under a second just now as they went through Barcroft and into the Sunny complex. You can see the Honda is getting closer to the Peugeot, and behind the 2nd of these Peugeots, Rob Butler, 3rd Peugeot in fact in the race, is starting to come under increased pressure now from Dave Newsham, who's closer this time into the hairpin. Will he try and throw it up the inside again? No, Butler is wise to that on this occasion, takes a very tight line in, and Newsham just can't quite get the power down on the exit of the corner. Jordan Brennan has now caught the, Max Goff, I should say, has now caught that 5th place battle. Jordan Brennan is on his way. And then behind Brennan, Mats Edmondson and Martin Richards would make up the front row of the grid for race 2. It's a top 12 grid reversal, remember, and that could be of significance if a Charlie Oliver, a Dave Marshall, a Callum Newsham can get themselves into that top 12. That could hugely benefit them later in the day. So there are lots of different battles to watch here, all of them significant.
Absolutely so. As there, Dave Newsham dives up the inside of Rob Butler to go 4th. And then runs out wide, so Butler gets the place back. So great battle between the two of them as they continue to squabble here. So 1 up and 1 down. Usual thing at Croft, if you dive bomb somebody but you can't scrub off the speed and wash out wide, the door is left wide open. All of that playing into the hands of Jack McIntyre, who is getting on with the job, catching Isaac Smith for 2nd place. And Butler and Newsham carry on a squabbling. Max Bird is next in the queue. Now, is he being able to go after them? In theory, he should, because they're holding each other up, and Bird is getting away from Proctor and Toff Jones, so he might get up there before the very end. Charlie Oliver is up into 12th because Jordan Brennan has gone a missing. He's tumbling down the order, isn't he?
Oh yeah, so Brennan might have gone off somewhere at the far end of the circuit. Dave Newsham this time makes the move for 4th place stick though, and it was at the hairpin where he had a look a couple of laps ago, and this time doesn't run too wide on the exits to put Dave Newsham back into 4th position. Now does he have the speed to chase after Jack McIntyre and Isaac Smith, who themselves got themselves a little bit closer that time, the gap down to about 8 tenths as they crossed the line between 2nd and 3rd. Now what of Newsham Jr.? Well, he's on the tail here of Dan Zelos, so this is for 15th position at the moment. Zelos, of course, recovering from his lap 1 spin, has been quicker than Callum so far today, so if Callum can just tag along here with Dan Zelos, that could actually benefit him more than going on the attack and trying to get through.
Indeed so. All the time they're working towards 12th place, aren't they, which would be pole for race 2, which is currently for Charlie Oliver. So if things were to stay as they are, he'd get a pole position out of all of this. Losing points, yes, but maybe then being able to buy some back in race 2. We are 12 minutes plus a lap away from the end, so a lot can yet kick off in this race as you see Senna Proctor go through. Croft, quite a significant circuit to the Proctor family, because not only is it local, but if you go back to the 1980s when it was Rallycross that kept the place alive, it was Senna's grandfather Tony with his remarkable Cosworth engine Ford Capri that was one of the real heroes around here, very successfully so. Rob Butler back onto the tail of Dave Newsham as they come up towards the timing line out of the hairpin then. Up past the pits they come, pit lane on the left, and Dave Newsham hangs on to 4th. Rob Butler is there fractions of a second behind, indeed a little bit nearer as they cross the line, because that was a better lap by Butler than it was Newsham. The leading gap then is 2.7 seconds, and Mike Epps is a bit like a cash register here, isn't he? Ka-ching, banking those points because he is pulling away, he's not making mistakes, and he can sense those points heading his way. He's got one already, of course, for that pole position.
Would you believe it? If they threw the checkered flag now, I think Epps would go back to the championship lead. That's how quickly things are changing here with every race. And a large part of that is down to this success balance that I know Mike isn't a huge fan of, but you can't deny the fact that it's giving us a fantastic championship storyline. Yes. It develops every week. And ultimately, you know, the best and most consistent drivers are still staying at the front. Had his computer not malfunctioned a week ago, Epps would probably still have been inside the top 2 or 3 of the championship. So it's working well as far as we can tell. So too is Jack McIntyre's Honda as he goes after Isaac Smith, but for 4th place Dave Newsham is not escaping Rob Butler. In fact, Butler's having a go getting back through on the outside into the complex. He almost runs off the road, but that's okay because the next corner's a right-hander, and Dave Newsham would be very brave to hang on around the outside there, which of course he is, and he does, and he succeeds in going back through at the hairpin. Brilliant battle this, but it's bringing Bird, Proctor, Toff Jones, Goff, and even maybe Edmondson, if he gets a shift on, into play as well. They're all catching that 4th place squabble.
Yes, Edmondson is taking Martin Richards with him. There they are. And Charlie Oliver, 12th, pole for race 2, is next in the queue. Martin Richards there, you can see him at work. Goes to the outside line down towards Clairvaux, but breaking late, Max Edmondson hangs onto the position. Charlie Oliver is almost there. He's got Dave Marshall behind him. Then it is Stapleford, Zelos, Callum Newsham. I get the feeling that it ain't going to stay in this order for much longer, so there might be one or two unhappy drivers by the end. You get the feeling that there's another storm about to brew up here as they head up towards Tower. Right now, Edmondson hangs on to 10th. Richards has a look to the inside line of the Power Max Racing car. He's not quite up the inside, is he? He's going to force the issue as they go through Tower. Out wide and over the curb goes Edmondson, but he will have the inside line for the next part of the circuit. He gets the place back going into the S's.
3 championship contenders right behind these two as well. Look, Oliver Marshall we've mentioned, but also Robbie Stapleton, who's dropped down to 8th in the points after struggling with ballast at Alton Park. Oliver dives up the inside of Richards. Oh no, there's contact. Oliver's off the road, so is Richards. And whilst Martin bounces his way back on the road in the same position, 11th place, Charlie Oliver is pointing very much the wrong way and is now back out of the points and, perhaps more importantly, out of race 2 pole position contention, it would seem. That's the risk. If you're already in a decent spot for race 2, is it worth taking the gamble and trying to get more points? Well, Robbie Stapleton thinks it might be. That move puts him now into 12th position, provisional pole for race 2. And Dave Marshall, just as soon as he moved into that magical 12th spot, finds himself back on the outside looking in. But how significant a moment could that prove to be for Charlie Oliver's championship campaign? That was an incident he could not afford.
And also Dan Zelos then now up into 13th at the expense of Dave Marshall. Riding on board with Dave now, 8 minutes and change remaining, plus the regulation lap. Don't forget that Callum Newsham is behind them. He's now finally got himself into the points ahead of James Merrills. Max Coates, first time out, 17th with his 45 kilos affecting the pace of the Hyundai. As Dave Marshall turns through Tower, touch of understeer, but don't forget he's carrying lots of weight in that car as well, 66 kilos. Is he under attack yet from Callum Newsham? 1.8 seconds, the margin between the two as they flick through the S's now. Up the road ahead, you've got Dave Marshall glued to the back of the recovering Dan Zelos, who actually hasn't recovered as rapidly as you might have anticipated. We know that Dan is quick. He had that moment on the first lap, but he's got a bit mired in midfield, hasn't he?
I would argue it was a sufficiently large moment, though, that actually I'd call 13th place not a bad effort. I think he was pretty much last after that and quite possibly had some damage. So, right, and definitely going to be... I think he's got a potential here to get into the top 10 again, because Edmondson is really struggling here as we get into the business end of the race. He's dropping back significantly from the 9 cars in front of him, and this queue behind grows larger and larger. So Zelos, even with 45 kilos of weight, his pace doesn't seem to be suffering as we get into the race. Look at the lap times, at 24.6 for Edmondson, and all of the cars behind him, despite their swabbling, are half a second quicker. So Edmondson is the cork in the bottle here, and any one of these drivers has shown already this season that they have the racecraft to take advantage of it, and for some of them, the extra points they could gain could prove really important.
Mike Epps, in the meantime, is nearly in race 2. So far ahead is he now, 3.7 seconds to the good. 10th is this battle pack then. Edmondson, Richards, Stapleford, pole for race 2 provisionally, then Zelos and Marshall, and Callum Newsham shouting, wait for me. He's almost there, but he could do with them tangling a little bit just to scrub off a bit more time, a bit more pace to throw him a lifeline. But there is a really good illustration of how the weight affects you around Croft. Meantime, for second place, Isaac Smith is under attack from Jack McIntyre, who, remember, is the leading sim racer. So he's heading the sim class and has been one of the revelations of this. Really, really impressive. He's taking the job to the real world drivers. Don't forget that he joined the championship only last time out, so he's still adapting to this car within the Assetto Corsa platform. On the inset there, you see Robbie Stapleford getting up the inside or on the outside of Dan Zelos, depending on which way round it looks, because they're trading places down to the hairpin. Dan Zelos stays ahead, or does he? Dave Marshall tries to buy back into that as they come up across the line. Smith to McIntyre, though, is only 3/10 with just under 6 minutes to go.
Yeah, McIntyre's got a shot at this, hasn't he? But how much is he willing to throw at Isaac Smith when third place is pretty much in the bag? Further back there are no thoughts of conservation, are there? They're all going for it. Every opportunity to move forward, people are trying to strike. Stapleford there losing out to Dave Marshall, who is just 1 place away from what could be a really significant race 2 pole position. Dan Zelos at the moment would be on pole, but he isn't done yet either. He's on the tail now of Martin Richards in the Peugeot as Stapleford launches an attack up the inside of Dave Marshall. Surely there was contact, couldn't quite see, but the Cupra does go ahead of the Peugeot and back into 13th. He's not backwards and coming forwards, is Robbie Stapleford. That was a good move on the brakes, and Jack McIntyre now is trying to make a move on Isaac Smith. Looks to the outside on the way into the complex. This, I remind you, is for second position. A brilliant effort this has been from Jack McIntyre. Already on course for a podium, but can he go 1 step higher?
Podium, class win, and second beckons, doesn't it? You see on the back of Isaac Smith's car, real, it says. That's to say that he's at the real racer class. It's also to prove it's a real fight that he's got on his hands. Jack McIntyre right there behind him. Down towards Clairvaux they go. 11 laps in the book. Up front, Mike Epps getting away all the time, and he will continue to pull away because these two are holding each other up now by squabbling. Can Isaac Smith make the car very, very wide through Hawthorne? Head up towards the chicane. It looks as though McIntyre here has got better pace. They're both ballast-free cars. That's the battle going on the inset, as you see there. Zelos going ahead of Martin Richards for 11th place, down towards Clairvaux. Lining up, McIntyre goes to the outside line, down towards Tower. Wide in, tight out. Surely he can't drive all the way around the outside of Isaac Smith. No, he can't. Smith, with pretty sharp elbows, sticks him out, hangs on to second.
Yeah, good driving that from Smith. He knew that as long as he stopped the car on the apex, it was going to prevent McIntyre from doing the switchback, and so the Peugeot stays ahead, but Sonny Inn is a potential overtaking chance. McIntyre, you can tell he's trying to do this cleanly, can't you? He knows that, yes, second place would be a really brilliant result, but third and the class win is not bad at all. He's also conscious, I think, of the fact that Dave Newsham is starting to inch back towards them here. The more that Isaac Smith drives defensively, the closer the Hyundai will become behind. Already 0.3 of a second quicker just in the last two corners with Dave Newsham. So, yes, McIntyre wants second place, but at what cost? It could so easily end up costing him a podium.
Stapleford and Marshall have had another coming together as across the line, two more local drivers really to Croft. Harrogate's Isaac Smith, relatively local, and then you've got Middlesbrough's Jack McIntyre behind him. Down towards Clairvaux they go. They can effectively demolish those floppy markers as they would in the real world. They stay visible within the platform here, but just like you'll find in the real world, the floppy markers at Clairvaux get demolished and the traffic cones at the chicane, so you can drive straight through them in this virtual race as well. So Smith second, McIntyre third. Now what about Dave Newsham? Is he going to be able to get close enough in the remaining 2.5 minutes plus a lap to have a go at getting onto the podium? I reckon he might do, because McIntyre has got a bit stuck now, and so Dave Newsham charging along might just get there before the end.
It only takes one more defensive manoeuvre from Isaac Smith, and I think it will bring Newsham that extra half a second or so closer, so that he will well and truly be part of the battle. So yeah, I do think he will get there. The other question is whether his son, Callum, could get himself at the front of the grid for race 2, because as you can see in the inset, he's continuing to close on this almighty battle for 10th place. It's still Edmondson that holds on to it. It's still Isaac Smith that holds on to second place overall, but that was that defensive manoeuvre into the complex. He took the inside line, he fended off McIntyre, but it holds both of those cars up. It allows Dave Newsham to close in, and now Jack McIntyre's role in all of this changes. He's not just on the attack, he's also got to watch his mirrors to try and keep the feisty Dave Newsham at bay.
Max Edmondson, in the meantime, is having to keep down Zelos at bay. Martin Richards, for the moment, is on pole for race 2, but there's no guarantee about anything in all of this, as Zelos and Edmondson trade places. So Zelos now goes 10th. Richards hangs on to his 12th place. They come across the line. So a flying lap is a 1:22. We're going to get 2 more laps in the time, plus the regulation lap I would offer you. So 3 more to go. Max Coates still 17th, Callum Newsham is still 15th, but as you say, creeping up onto the back here of this line of cars. He's almost there on the tail of Dave Marshall. In the meantime, Smith second, McIntyre third, Newsham Senior is 4th. There they are on the inset shot, working their way down through the Jim Clark S's once again. And Jack McIntyre now finds himself in this invidious position of attacking and defending at the same time. He has not been able to get past Smith, therefore he has been caught by Newsham, and now the whole complexion of that second, third, fourth battle is going to change.
Yeah, and if they really hold each other up, then don't count Rob Butler out either. He's less than a second and a half behind them, so lots still to play out in all of this. For 10th place, 9th place I should say, no, 10th right the first time, Dan Zelos is getting away, especially because they're driving into each other behind. Martin Richards, just a bit of a love tap there onto Edmondson, and that was more than a love tap from Robbie Staple, but he saw a gap on the inside, and he now moves up into 12th position. Up to 30th goes Dave Marshall. 2 places lost then for Martin Richards. The next car on his tail is Callum Newsham, but Robbie Stapleford on a number of occasions in this race has proven he's not afraid to get the elbows out. He's not making any friends, but he is making positions. He may get very close to the Golf of Edmondson, which still is hanging on. I don't know how Max is doing this. He's clearly not as quick as the cars behind. He's placing that Golf in exactly the right spot to frustrate the cars behind him and hang on to a top 10.
But also, also they're busy tripping over themselves, aren't they? So just when one driver thinks, right, I can make a move, whoops, contact there against McIntyre from Dave Newsham. Finish the sentence, Addison. Just when one driver tries to have a go, something else kicks off, so it gives Max Edmondson a little bit more breathing space, if only for a corner. So if they could somehow work together, they might be able to do something about him. But every time somebody closes, they find themselves under attack. Zelos has been under attack. Now it's Robbie Stapleford trying to attack, but having to fend off Marshall and Richards and Callum Newsham. And Jack McIntyre, in the meantime, sure to drive over the top of Isaac Smith, is running out of ideas. He's right there. I don't think he's ever been this close as they come up towards the complex. Through the left, brake hard for the right. Can he dive up the inside there? No. Gap covered off by Isaac Smith. What about up towards the hairpin then as they come through ready to start the last lap? Again, no. Isaac Smith hangs on to this, and McIntyre, while he's been looking for a way by, has been caught again by Newsham as they start the last lap.
And whilst you've been watching the fight for second place, in the inset, Dave Marshall went off at Croft, and so he has dropped all the way down to 16th place now, which means that Robbie Stapleford is still 12th, except he's not. He goes 11th but runs wide, and that could lose him a place to Martin Richards as they come out of the hairpin. Somehow it's still Edmondson 11th, but it's side by side for 12th now. This is rather making your point, isn't it? They're too busy falling over each other to really put together a coercive effort against Max Edmondson. The Cupra stays ahead of the Peugeot, but the next car in line is Callum Newsham, who's now just 2 overtakes away from a race 2 pole position. That could be 1 very shortly. He's on the inside of Richards into the chicane. Can't make it work. Richards stays in front. And of course, Newsham also has to watch his mirrors because James Merrill's out of nowhere has joined in this battle as well. There's almost too much good racing going on for us to follow. No racing at all really required for Mike Epps, though. He has just set sail into the distance. 8 seconds up the road. This is what Mike Epps can do with no ballast on board.
Absolutely right then. 27 kilos, that's all he's got to lug around, and boy does it make a difference then. So Mike Epps is heading for a 3rd victory of the season, more than anybody else. Mike Epps up then towards the timing line. He is going to win the 9th race in the MSL FastR Touring Car eSeries with Power Max Racing, powered by VRRC, and a brilliant effort by Isaac Smith to hang on to 2nd place. But who is going to be 3rd? It's a drag race to the line. It is just Jack McIntyre who hangs on in there to keep Dave Newsham at bay. Rob Butler takes 5th ahead of Max Bird, Senna Proctor, Alex Toth-Jones. 9th goes the way of Max Goff. 10th across the line should be Dan Zelos, and it is. And then 11th, Max Edmondson, who has done a really good job of defending from Robbie Stapleford then, who ends up 12th and pole for race 2 ahead of Martin Richards. Callum Newsham 14th ahead of James Merrills to round out the scorers. Then Dave Marshall 16th after his off. Jordan Brennan, Charlie Oliver, Max Coates all delayed for various reasons, whether it was an incident or weight. And Jack Keithley 20th only ahead of Stuart Lyons, Kenny Press, and then David Ward. Not the result that Jack was after. The Williams eSport driver having a really torrid race. So there, the provisional result. Mike Epps victorious ahead of Isaac Smith and Jack McIntyre for 3rd. Dave Newsham bags 4th from Rob Butler and Max Bird. Senna Proctor 7th ahead of Alex Toth-Jones and Max Goff, with Dan Zelos 10th, Max Edmondson 11th, and Robbie Stapleford's 12th provisionally gives him pole for race 2, which is coming up in a few minutes' time. First, though, let's try and have a word from our victorious drivers. Andy has made his way to the interview area.
I have indeed, where I think there are a few stories to tell amongst our top 3 finishes, perhaps a little bit less for Mike Epps to tell us really, because Mike, that was pretty much as simple as a race win can get. You had a decent start, fended off the challenge from Rob into the first corner, and then, well, quite frankly, we didn't see you for about 20 minutes.
Yeah, it's not very good for your partners, is it, when you're this far? Right? That's one thing I always say to some of the guys I work with in the real sport is one of the disadvantages to being at the front is actually sometimes you don't get any airtime. But yeah, no, that was mint. I was really happy with the car in both quali and race trim, and I think it just proves how much the weight hurts you, especially in the race. The tyres go off so much when you have ballast on, and we're still carrying 27 kilos, but that was mega. Really happy with the performance, fastest lap, and yeah, obviously the guys battled towards the end, so it did help me stretch out a bigger lead. So we'll find out how raceable this car is now and see if we can tear through the pack a bit. I need to, because I want those points back.
Well, I'm just desperately trying to do the maths. I actually think you're back in the championship lead, would you believe, after that race? It's been such a topsy-turvy last few races, but you know as well as anyone that can all change so easily when you start from the middle of a reversed grid.
That's exactly it. clearly the weight makes such a difference and the points, the way they kind of gravitate to the top as well, can create a real flip in where you are with each race. The advantage is I still have the weight off for this race, so I know that I've got a really quick car, and I'm going to make a point of tearing through as quick as I can, I think.
Well, we're very much looking forward to seeing that. We're just getting the points on the screen. Yeah, you arrived here, I think, nearly a full race win off the championship lead. You're now 9 points ahead, so it has all turned around very quickly for Mike Epps, but we'll wait and see how he gets on in race 2. Mike, well done on the race win, and best of luck for this second one.
Cheers, mate. That's great news.
He's well and truly smiling now, is Mike Epps. I'd imagine there's a bit of a grin on the face of Isaac Smith as well, because Isaac, that was a pretty hard-fought second place. You were under a little bit of pressure there towards the end. We may not have Isaac Smith. I'm not hearing him at my end. We think he might have muted his mic at his end, so we'll just give him another chance to play around with some of the buttons. Isaac, have we got you back now? Doesn't sound like we have, so we'll move on. We'll see if we can get back to Isaac in a second, because we do have our third place finisher, Jack McIntyre, who I'm also itching to chat to, because Jack, that is your first podium in the series. In only your second appearance, you've shed that 45 kilos of newcomer's weight, and we're really seeing what you're capable of now.
Cheers. Yeah, that was a good race. That was well defended by Isaac. I think it's always easy to say someone's defended really well when you're absolutely furious after the race that you couldn't get past, but no, that was a good race. Yeah, like you said, shed the ballast this week, so the car's feeling a little bit better. I think there's still a lot more to do with the setup to get it working, but yeah, looking positive.
Yeah, I mean, you seem to ease your way into that race. The top two looked like they built a bit of a gap up in the early laps, but then once you got some heat into the tyres, you pretty quickly reeled Isaac in. Were you confident at that point that you'd have something for him?
I knew I could give it a go. I think with the bit of weight that Isaac's got, it really affects the tyres. So I could see him slowing up a bit, and I could feel my tyres going off, but certainly not as fast as his were. So I knew I'd be able to have a go, but it's so hard to pass around here, and I think he had a lot more traction in the slow speed. So I was really struggling there. At least I can try and take that forward to the next race.
Yeah, absolutely. How are you feeling about this reverse grid now?
We'll see. It's going to be maybe a bit of carnage down into turn 1 and turn 2, but hopefully just try and get through it and then see where we go.
Almost like you've seen a few touring car races at Croft in your time. Best of luck for that. Hopefully you can survive the early skirmishes, and we'll get to see some more good pace from you.
Cheers, mate. Thank you.
So that's Jack McIntyre in third place. I'll give Isaac Smith one more go before we do have to head off for race 2. Isaac, have we got you now?
Yeah, my microphone disconnected, so...
That's all right. You can always trust technology to let you down at the worst moment. You did not let yourself down in that race, though, did you? That was some really stout defensive work to hang on to second.
Yeah, well, I got my head down initially, and we got into P2 quite early on. And to be honest, I just haven't done enough testing to be able to. Really, if I wouldn't have made as many mistakes, we'd have had a chance at him at the end. But we would make a mistake, lose time, catch him a little bit, lose time again when I made another mistake. Really, he's drove mega, so yeah, well done too.
Well, it was a brilliant battle to watch. We're going to have to let you go, Isaac, because I think we're less than a minute away from race 2, but congratulations on the podium.
Yeah.
There you go then, David. So 3 happy drivers, a very happy Mike Epps, but what can he do now from 12th place?
Let's find out. Grid is forming, and you're right, we're into the final minute before we go racing. It's one of the great things about esports, isn't it? Racing can come thick and fast. Not great if you're a clerk of the course, because you can't review anything between races, but we're set to go. So it is Robbie Stapleford then, 21 kilos of weight on pole position, lights are ready. He's got Max Edmondson alongside him, Dan Zelos on row 2 in the orange car with Max Goff alongside. He's got 15 kilos. Alex Toth-Jones, Senna Proctor, row 3 as the lights. Red will go out now. We are racing. It's race 10 of the championship. 20 minutes plus a lap. It is go. Good getaway there by Goff, except the gap ahead of him is about to narrow. And how many are going to get caught up in the dramas at Clairvaux and at Hawthorne? Let's find out. Stapleford hits the front then and hitting behind Edmondson and Goff. We've got one car off into the gravel in the background. And there is more mayhem through the chicane, and there's more mayhem at Tower. So Stapleford has got away, and the one that he's off is James Merrills, but Stapleford leads the pack, then Edmondson second, Goff third, Senna Proctor fourth. And what progress of the like of Mike Epps? Well, he's 12th as the safety car is being deployed because of all of the fun and games at the first corner. This enables people to catch the queue of cars, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely, and one or two of them definitely looking to take advantage of that, I think. Dave Newsham is one of them as well. Of course he is. 23rd halfway around the first lap, so he's had some adventures. Brilliant start from Stapleford though, that's exactly what he had to do. Robbie Stapleford, remember, is not that heavy. He's only got 21 kilos in his car for this weekend, so he should now be able to make hay whilst the sun shines and he's got the track position. And crucially, he stayed ahead of Max Edmondson, who Robbie knows firsthand how hard it is to get past Max from his attempts to do so in race one. So far so good for the Cooper man. So far so good for Callum Newsham as well. He's up into 11th place ahead of Mike Epps. They are the top two in the championship, remember. Newsham 9 points behind Epps, so the fact that he's ahead of the championship leader now is a good start.
It is a VSC, a virtual safety car. I should really say a virtual safety car, I suppose. So you won't see it. We'll go racing this time at the timing line. Robbie Stapleford very nearly chucked away the race lead there. Had that been under racing conditions, they would have gone swarming past on the inside. They all had to hold station behind, and Stapleford leads over the line now. Edmondson second, Goff is third, Proctor fourth, under attack from ATJ, Alex Toth-Jones. Then you've got Dan Zelos ahead of Max Bird. Jack McIntyre is eighth, could be one to watch, couldn't he? Because he's weight free and he's making good progress. Ninth is Butler, 10th is Smith, Epps is 11th, Richards 11th. What about Callum Newsham? Down the place, oh dear, oh dear. He's having with regular rival Jordan Brennan as the race leader Robbie Stapleford tries to make that break. He's 7/10 to the good already.
Yeah, I didn't spot what happened to Callum Newsham there. Oh yes, no, so he's moved back up again. I think there was a timing glitch of some sort. He has only lost the one position, but it was, crucially, to Mike Epps. But yeah, here is the battle pack that he's in. Charlie Oliver into the back of Jordan Brennan, and that was
David Ward.
Running wide. Yeah, David Ward fired out of line. Jack Keithley also joining in the fun now. So again, some pretty big names here that are just struggling to make their way deep into the points. Callum Newsham in 12th, though, has now escaped that group once again. But this little pack has trouble written all over it as well, doesn't it? It's a very defensive line being taken by Alex Toth-Jones as Dan Zelos tries to get through and does so. He's up the inside. That was a cheeky little move there from Zelos. But Toth-Jones, having none of it, comes back up the inside. And now Max Bird and Jack McIntyre and Rob Butler and even Isaac Smith look to try and take advantage.
Yeah, Jack McIntyre losing out to Rob Butler, though, there as they come out of the hairpin up over the timing line. So as the leader gets away, it all shuffles behind. Goff second, Edmondson third, Senna Proctor hanging on to fourth place. He's been the fifth place king so far, 3 of them for Senna. This could be his best yet, his best result of the season if he can hang on in there. Toth-Jones, after his rather robust way of getting the place back from Zelos. Then Max Bird next up ahead of Butler, McIntyre, Smith, Epps, and then Callum Newsham in 12th place, so he's scoring and actually potentially slightly better than in race one as Max Coates there gets up the inside of Martin Richards, takes 16th place, flicking through the chicane.
Yeah, Newsham fading now. I mean, he's nearly 3 seconds back from Mike Epps after just being behind him for a lap. That's the effect the weight is having on him, I think. Martin Richards then turns down through the right-hander at Tower, and so Max Coates, not Martin Richards, Max Coates on the right-hand side of our screen. Takes a moment to catch his breath after a fairly lively start to his race. Max in 16th place at the moment as we rejoin now, battling inside the top 10. Max Bird in the Honda, red, white and black Honda, that is, just ahead of the blue and white example of Jack McIntyre, who after his good start is now struggling to gain much further ground. I know it's a reasonably long race, but he'll want to get on with this if he wants to try and repeat his race one podium. And of course, in theory, the further up the order he gets, the bigger his advantage should become. He's racing people that he was significantly quicker in race one, but around a tight, technical, narrow circuit like this one, even if you're maybe half a second quicker than the car in front, it's not the work of a moment to get past them.
You're right about Callum Newsham dropping away from Mike Epps, but bear in mind his car is over 3 times heavier than Mike Epps in terms of the success weight. 3 times heavier. So you're bearing in mind what Mike's been saying about the weight and how it affects the tyres. You can understand why Callum is dropping away to the tune of over 3 seconds. This is Senna Proctor's view. That's Max Edmondson ahead, and we saw how stolid Max was in his defence in race one. They concertina up a little bit. Now, what about Max Goff, who has been chipping away, is getting better and better over the course of the season? For my money, he is creeping up onto the back here of Robbie Stapleford's car. Robbie has had a race win. Max Goff has had 2 third places and is slightly lighter in terms of weight. So what about Max Goff now? He is closing slightly on the leader.
Yeah, that's impressive actually, isn't it? The Peugeot definitely getting a little bit closer to the Cupra out in front, and he's bringing friends with him. Edmondson and Proctor sticking right with the second place man. Max Coates sticking right with Martin Richards here. He's closed in, and they're just ahead of a curb-hopping Stuart Lyons, who always exciting to watch, isn't he, Stuart? Even if he's not necessarily dicing right at the front of the field, he gets stuck in, and actually he and Dave Newsham, two old pals, are working their way closer and closer to the pair in front. So they work their way through the hairpin. It's three Hyundais and a Peugeot together, and the second and third of those Hyundais swap places and a little bit of paint. Dave Newsham just rubbed his way up the inside of Stuart Lyons' car and takes over 18th place at the hairpin. They're all trying, of course, to catch the two Audis in front as well, of Jack Keithley and Charlie Oliver, who again don't look like they're on for a big points haul here.
No, it's not an Audi circuit, seemingly, Croft, is it? Because I know they've both got weight in, but they've never really been able to show the pace. There is going wide Max Edmondson, which enables Proctor to close a little bit. Then the Power Max racing car of Alex Toft-Jones next in the queue, ahead of Dan Zelos in the Davanti Esports Golf. So they're starting to pair off a little bit, aren't they? And for the race lead, it is game on. Golf taking this to the max, so to speak. He's right there on the back of Robbie Stapleford, just as Proctor is crawling all over Edmondson like a rash as they come into Sunny in, Sunny out through that double apex right. Further back, there's Butler, Bird and McIntyre running together. Epps is a bit stuck in 11th place for the moment, but Max Goff lining up to have a go for the race lead into the complex. Gets his nose chopped off there, but that puts Stapleford offline. A little bit of a rub between them, so Stapleford has to go all defensive up to the hairpin, and Max Goff now looking very racy indeed as Proctor goes third in his mirror.
Yeah, Proctor up the inside of Edmondson, takes the place away, and that's really delayed Edmondson, so Toft-Jones is alongside him now. That's the outside, though, into Clervaux. That's not likely to work, and he might be able to figure a way out. Well, there we go, that's one way of doing it. Drives into the side of the Golf, and actually it doesn't work. The Golf stays in front. I was going to say Toft-Jones could potentially have orchestrated his way to the inside into Hawthorne, but that wasn't the approach he decided to take in the end. So as you were, it is Edmondson just losing one place to Senna Proctor, who is now on course, as you said, for that podium that he's been searching for all season long. Third place for Proctor, but could he go even better? Because with the leaders starting to get more and more racy with each other, it might start to delay them.
And one off in the background as well, bouncing off the barriers, so it's all getting very lively lower down the pack as you see Max Bird go through. Was that Max Coates that was going off the road, or was it somebody else? Anyway, they have all survived, more or less. So Jack McIntyre also getting himself involved in fun and games as the cars turn their way through, with this being lap 6. 5 laps are done. Stapleford then ahead of Goff, and now Senna Proctor looking as though he is closing on the top two. Alex Toft-Jones versus Dan Zelos. They've crossed swords once in this race, but Zelos is ahead for the moment and staying ahead with Butler, McIntyre and Bird next in the queue. But Max Goff now, I think, is looking ever more threatening for the race lead, and yet Senna Proctor, who is lighter still, 9 kilos in Senna's car, he is right with him, having his best showing of the championship.
Yeah, Senna Proctor is absolutely flying now, isn't he? He's already caught basically the leading two, and again that now changes that dynamic slightly. A 3-car fight is going to make life a little bit more difficult perhaps for Max Goff, who gets stuck in the middle. Alex Toft-Jones in the middle of a heated battle here as well. He's been making friends over the course of the first half of this second race of the day at Croft. Running in 6th position though, that's a decent effort. He and Dan Zelos have both been sort of tied together all day long. They've got company behind, haven't they, with Rob Butler, Jack McIntyre and Max Bird. Dare I say it though, things have just settled down for the moment. I don't anticipate it to stay this way for long, but no one's hit each other for at least half a lap, and they haven't actually changed positions for a while. And look what happens, Edmondson gets his head down and starts to get away from them again.
There's been contact further back though. Dave Marshall and Jack Keithley have had a coming together. I know we've not been looking at them and they're out of the points, but they have decided to get themselves together. Off the road in the background there, Max Edmondson. It is still 3 for the lead as there Max Goff is on the back of Stapleford. He challenged here a lap ago and couldn't do it. This time he does have a go, but he's going to go deep into the corner. That opens up the door for Stapleford to challenge on the way to the hairpin. He's on the outside line. Proctor tries to go to the outside as well. Wide in, tight out. Is that going to be the plan? It is not, because as they head up towards the line, it is the new race order. Max Goff is ahead, but can Stapleford line up for a dive on the inside down towards Clervaux? Proctor has fallen back slightly, possibly waiting to see what kicks off ahead of him. But we have a new leader, Max Goff it is, with 9 minutes and change on the clock. He leads at Croft.
Max Goff, whose best results so far this year are 2 third places, and trying to move up from third place is Senna Proctor, and he does it. That was a beautiful move. Clearly has the front end of that Honda working well through Hawthorn to carry such a tight line, but still carry more speed than Stapleford, who is now starting to struggle. Maybe some damage on the Cupra, dirt on the tyres, not too sure why, but he's suddenly fading, and Proctor now looks good, maybe even for a race win, because he instantly latches onto the rear bumper of Max Goff, and those two start to get away. So it's Goff the leader, Proctor second, then Stapleford, Edmondson and Zelos tied together for third, fourth and fifth position, and still plenty of changing that can go on. Mike Epps, by the way, running in 10th position, a quiet race this time for Mike, but you'd sense there might still be a few more positions that he could gain, because it's all going to kick off ahead of him over the final 9 minutes or so.
Yes, I was just thinking as you said that, there's no guarantee he'll stay 10th. He should be a lot better, because as McIntyre attacks Butler, there's contact and Jack Mack gets sideways, catches the slide. Now what other dramas are going on around him? That's Max Bird up on the inside line, so suddenly Epps is back at the races. He's going to be able to possibly get past 1, 2, 3 maybe here. He's around the outside of McIntyre, plus there are other battles raging on up the road. 4 tenths between Goff and Proctor as they go over the line. 8 minutes are on the clock now, and as they turn their way through Clairvaux Corner, Stapleford is third, but under real pressure from Edmondson. Dan Zelos fifth, going really nicely. Alex Toth-Jones is sixth. He's another driver looking for his best of the year, so it's another topsy-turvy race this. And in terms of the championship, where is Dave Marshall to be found after a pretty awful race? 22nd, way back, not scoring points.
Yeah, he was part of a 3-way tie for second in the championship coming into this race, but he won't be by the end of it. There he is, look, going through the chicane just ahead of James Merrills. Jack Keithley not on for points at the moment. Callum Newsham's only 40th, with his father actually breathing down his neck now in a private battle for the final couple of points paying positions. So again, we're going to see a shuffle of the championship order at the end of this race as we move well and truly into the second half of the season. Right, on board with Dan Zelos, I love this view. You can really see the front wheels working away, especially through the high-speed corners. The amount of correction that the driver has to make just to keep the thing pointing in a straight line, battling understeer now through these tight corners as the front tyres start to go past their best. That might be the issue that Robbie Stapleford is starting to run into, because his pace, ever since they got about a third of the way into the race, just hasn't been as strong as it was earlier on. You can see the distance he's dropped to Senna Proctor, nearly 2 seconds back now from the top two, who themselves, David, are separating slightly. And what was that all about? There's a car sideways. Rob Butler's off the road, as you can see. He's on a rallycross course halfway down the pit straight. Someone got sideways. I think it was Toth-Jones. Yes. Got sideways in a straight line, and all hell broke loose behind him.
Yes, Alex Toth-Jones, you're right, who's, according to the timing screen, had a crash with Rob Butler and with the environment. Big dramas for Alex Toth-Jones, who himself tumbles down the field. But yes, it all, a little bit like we had in the Porsche Cayman race here at the TOCA meeting last year, happened on the pit straight, and mayhem ensues. So that shuffles the order, and suddenly Epps is up to 7th place. So he's gained hugely over the last half of a lap, hasn't he? As Max Goff leads from this man, Senna Proctor, clock ticking on down, 6 minutes to go, then nose to tail for P1. Senna Proctor then with only 9 kilos of weight on board, 3 fifth places. He's advanced hugely on that. Is it going to be a second? Is it going to be a win? Epps is up to 6th. Ka-ching! More points for the championship, with his opposition falling apart around him, really, as far as championship hopes are concerned, with Callum Newsham struggling with the weight, Dave Marshall way back. Who was next in the championship coming into all of this? Charlie Oliver. You've got to go a long way down to find Charlie, 22nd. So Mike Epps having another stellar showing. Over the line goes the leader, Goff to Proctor. Senna is quicker, he's chipping away.
And these two are only 4 points apart in the championship, and they're within about 20 of the championship lead, so you can't even count these two out. Was that bit of a headbutt maybe there from Proctor to Goff as they went into Hawthorn? I think there might have been, but Goff stands his ground, hangs on to the spot. Senna Proctor, though, starting maybe to get a bit frustrated here. He knows he's got the pace for a race win, and unlike in earlier rounds that we've seen this season, he's not running out of tyres, he's not got himself involved in someone else's accident. He knows this is a golden opportunity to get himself that first race victory of the year and properly move into championship contention. So overtaking going on behind, wasn't it? Dan Zelos for the podium suddenly becomes a possibility. He gets ahead of Max Edmondson for 4th, so he now chases after the other orange car, the Cupra of Robbie Stapleford. So again, as we move into the final 5 minutes of the race, it is a job to know where to look. A battle for the lead, a battle for third, the championship leader moving forward, erstwhile championship leaders trying to get whatever they can from the midfield. It is all going on in this ever-entertaining season.
And also, we've had a coming together further back between Bird and McIntyre as the leaders are still nose to tail. It's a clean fight, whisper it, for the race lead. Hope I'm not tempting fate by saying that. But Senna Proctor and Max Goff having a very good, proper fight that hopefully isn't going to give Andy Ringland, the clerk of the course, much to look at in the week. Over the line they come then. It is still Max just ahead. And on that lap, he was, 14 thousandths of a second quicker by way of a lap time. Down towards Clairvaux they run, still nose to tail. Stapleford third, but he's got Dan Zelos breathing right down his neck. Edmondson is fifth, Epps sixth. And the next group of cars with Alex Toft-Jones heading for the pit lane out of the race. Big shame that after good pace early on. I think the damage sustained a lap ago is too great. So Alex Toft-Jones is effectively going to be a retirement. And out of all of that, Epps is up to fifth now.
Yeah, this is brilliant. Teflon coated is Mike Epps, isn't he? Just seems to skirt around the majority of the problems, although we said this at Brands Hatch in the first reverse grid race of the year, and then right at the end he got caught up in a bit of contact, so not handing in this fifth place on a platter just yet. He could still catch the third place squabble because Dan Zelos has now caught Robbie Stapleford, but Robbie is not going to want to hand this third place away. 8th in the points coming into this race is Robbie, and as we made the point, anyone that's inside the top dozen or so in the points could still win the championship. So Robbie is going to want to hang on to the 15 points that you get for third. They go down in 2-point increments until you get out of the top 4 or 5, and then it's 1 point per position. So the higher up the order you are, the more important it is to hang on to the place. But look at what this defensive driving is doing. It's bringing the next group up to them. Mike Epps, despite running a bit wide out of the hairpin there, is closing all the time on the 2 cars ahead, and he's bringing Edmondson, McIntyre and Bird with him.
And 2 3/4 minutes to go. 0.3 of a second between the top 2. Mike Epps for the podium. Could that be on the way that he's going with relatively little weight in the car? Edmondson versus McIntyre. Max Bird is there in 8th place as the leaders are as one. Down towards Tower they go. Max Goff, then number 63 in the Peugeot, keeping Senna Proctor's Honda Civic Type R at bay. Senna to the inside line, dives through, grabs the lead, and that looked pretty easy. The door was a yawning gap on the inside, wasn't it? So far open was it? So Max Goff loses the lead, fights back into the S's, maybe caught napping there, and he's been stung into action. He wants that lead back. Proctor is ahead, but look at Goff now, he's really on his toes.
Oh, he goes up the inside into Sonny. He's never going to stop the car, surely. I think he has. What a brilliant move that was from Max Goff, and he's got the lead away again. Senna Proctor must have thought he had that one made, but Max Goff not going to let him get away with this without a real scrap, and gets first position back, side by side for third place. I was about to say these two were catching the leaders as a result of that. That's probably not the case anymore, because Dan Zelos sees a chance to get up the inside into the hair, but he can't do it. Mike Epps, who has not yet had 2 podium results in the same day. He always seems to do well in one race and then struggles a bit in the other. He had that win at Brands Hatch in race 1, but got nerfed off the road in race 2, had a bad race 1 at Alton Park, but won the reverse grid race. Can he double up on podiums here at Croft? He has a go at the inside of Zelos, who's sideways. Can he save it? Yes, he can. And Mike Epps, I think, bailed out of that one there. He didn't want to have a sideways Golf clattering into him.
And also, perhaps that was, if you like, self-punishment, wasn't it? If he'd have gone through, it might have then meant that the clerk of the course needed to dock him a place. So he didn't force the issue, drops back behind. Senna Proctor takes the lead under braking, but he's on the outside line, so he's going to have to give way. Max Goff goes back through. We are going to get to the end of the time on this lap as Proctor gets 2 wheels on the grass, trying to get up the inside for the second part of the Jim Clark S's. That forces Goff off the road, heading down towards Barcroft. Proctor back through into the race lead. This could yet end in tears, couldn't it?
How they did that, I don't know. I think I can count on the fingers of one hand how many times I've seen cars successfully go side by side through the Jim Clark S's without a scrap of contact. Brilliant stuff, that. Proctor back into the lead. Now this time, can he make good his escape? They're going to have 2 more laps to go though, aren't they? I think they won't, well, they might just get to the line before the time ticks down to 0. It's going to be touch and go, so this might be the penultimate lap they're starting, it might be the last one, but either way, Senna Proctor has now hit the front at the right time and looks as though he's starting to steal a bit of a march over Goff behind. The time has ticked down to 0. Final lap then, I think, begins here for Proctor and Goff. with Robbie Stapleford looking a bit more secure in third. Epps, by the way, whilst that was all going on, has now got the better of Dan Zelos, and look, he's on the tail of Stapleford.
Absolutely right. Now, what about Goff? Can he come back at Proctor? Senna is slightly lighter, remember, in terms of the weight in the car. Epps for the podium, I was suggesting a few laps back. Remember, when we started focusing on Mike, he was 10th, and here he is, 4th, and could be 3rd before the very end, and he's heavier than the man he's chasing. 27 kilos, plays 21. Epps to the outside line. Is he going to run out of road? He is. Does that lose him a place? It does. Zelos goes ahead of him. So Mike Epps tried to gain a place. Instead, he's lost one.
Yeah, that was always the risk. He was so late on the brakes, and it's a bumpy braking zone. Is that Proctor off? It was. Senna Proctor was off at the Jim Clark S's. No, he's a disconnection issue, I think, wasn't it? He's back in now. That was bizarre. So that was, and you can see the car lagging around. Can his internet connection survive the final sector? That was real drama.
Right, now let's see then. Somebody else is watching YouTube in the house, I guess, but the gap is nothing. Now, is the flag going to be out? Did they squeeze through with enough time to spare, or is the flag going to be ready for Senna Proctor potentially to score a maiden victory then as he comes out of the hairpin? Up towards the timing line, Senna Proctor it is who is going to lead. Senna Proctor comes across the line then for a first win in the MSL FastR Touring Car eSeries with Power Max Racing, powered by VRRC. Max Goff goes second, Dan Zelos third, fourth Robbie Stapleford ahead of Mike Epps fifth, and Jack McIntyre is sixth. Half a second between Senna Proctor and Max Goff at the end. What a race. Great racing all the way through, lots to talk about. And for that lead fight, significantly, it was clean all the way. Stuart Lyons there goes through 15th place. He's in the points. And Charlie Oliver has had a pretty horrible day here. And Charlie and Alex Toft-Jones after his pit stop, 20th and 21st. And that's bad for Charlie as far as the championship is concerned, isn't it? So Charlie Oliver then is 20th over the line. Alex Toft-Jones, after that is Mick Sutton crossing the line, 22nd. But Senna Proctor, Max Goff and Dan Zelos are top three. First podium for Dan, of course. First podium, first win for Senna. Don't forget the best he'd had up until that point was a string of fifth places. So really impressive drive. And the championship now is looking provisionally like this. Mike Epps on 95 points to the 86 of Callum Newsham. And the 86 of Rob Butler tied for second place. Dave Marshall down to fourth ahead of Jack Keithley. As far as the race is concerned, Senna Proctor then taking the win from Max Goff and Robbie Stapleford in third spot. Fourth, Mike Epps, Dan Zelos fifth, Jack McIntyre sixth. The top 10 rounded out by, as you see there, Max Edmondson ahead of Max Bird, Jordan Brennan and Dave Newsham. Championship leader coming into the event, Callum Newsham 13th. Right. Let's hear from drivers, which will start with, no doubt, a very happy Senna Proctor. Andy McEwan has made his way to the interview area.
Yes, apologies, David. I'd already ran off towards the podium then when you tried to ask me a question. But I'm here now with our race winner, Senna Proctor. First podium of the season, Senna. And I think there's a strong argument to say this has been a long time coming, hasn't it? Senna doesn't want to talk to me either.
I think he's muted himself still.
Yeah, it's muted in Discord, I think. Senna, you need to... Well, I'd love to tell you how to fix it. Unfortunately, I'm not too sure. We'll come back to Senna in a second then. I can at least see when he's unmuted himself. We'll move to second place, Max Goff instead then. And Max, your side of the story we'll get first then, because that was a brilliant battle there with Senna throughout the final 5 or 6 minutes or so. It looked like he had you, then you got him straight back again. Did you enjoy that? This is going well, isn't it? Max Goff has muted himself as well, I think. Well, Max, can you hear me now? Well, you can hear me. I think it's the problem is we can't quite hear you at the moment. So we'll, again, work on that in a moment. Right, Dan Zelos, will you talk to me? Tell me about your third place, because you also had quite a lively race there, didn't you?
I'm in shock, to be honest. And my P tracker says I'm fourth, so I know it was very close between me and Robbie. But you know, hats off to Robbie, he defended so well. And I don't know, going into the last lap, I was fifth and not expecting to be third. So no, I'm really happy with that. You know, we had a bit of unluckiness in the first race, so yeah, I was really happy to bring the Davanti Tyres Golf home in third place.
I mean, you did all right last time at Snetterton, even with that 45 kilos of newcomers ballast in the car. So did you always kind of feel like this might be your weekend to really shine? You get rid of the weight, it's a track that you know and have gone well at in the past. So were your hopes pretty high ahead of the races today that you could get some good results?
I had my fingers crossed. I mean, Croft has never been a track in the past in real life that I've had much luck on. Croft had never quite mastered. I mean, that's very difficult when you're battling against people like Matt's Coates throughout the last 3-4 years of my career, because it's his home circuit. But I was hoping to be near the front. I didn't think I'd quite have the pace to be this high up, but no, I'm really happy with the result, and that's 2 podiums in one day after the mini challenge as well. So perfect day overall.
Yeah, maybe you're starting to warm to Croft a little bit now. Talk us through the last lap there then, because like you say, you went from 5th to 3rd, and we didn't actually see how you did it. What happened?
Well, Mike did a really good move on me a lap prior to get into 4th place, and he was really hounding down Robbie for 3rd, and I think he possibly just outbroke himself a little bit going into the tower, I think, which got me up the inside of him, and then I was just hunting down Robbie as quick as I could, and I really concentrated on getting the best exit I could at the last corner, which is a very slow corner and it's very difficult to overtake, but I was able to get the run on him, and he gave me racing room. Thank you, Robbie, and just got him across the line.
Moving forward now then into the sort of final third of the championship, obviously a late entrant, so a championship campaign is not really on the cards, but a race win, surely that's on your horizon.
100%. I'd love to be able to get this Golf onto the front row in quali. You know, there's a lot of fast drivers out there, so quali would be the starting one, and then bringing that out and being able to lead a race, you know, that would really make my day, and I'm sure my Devanti tyres and cam system sponsors would love to see that on live TV as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, fingers crossed. Silverstone in a week's time might be when we see you challenging for that first victory. Well done, Dan. Dan Zelos then gets himself a 3rd place in race number 2 at Croft. Right then, we'll move from 3rd to 2nd now, shall we? And try Max Goff again. Max, can we hear you?
Yeah, I think so.
There we go. Max, I'm glad, because I really want to talk to you, because that was a brilliant race between you and Senna there. Ultimately, Senna got the better of you, but it could have gone either way, really, couldn't it?
Yeah, it felt like a 20-minute endurance race for me. There's nothing worse than knowing someone behind you is quicker, and every time I made a move on the person in front trying to gap him, he followed through. So there was just no chance of getting a gap. And then, when I only had to defend the last complex, but as the race wore on, we having to defend more and more. And the Peugeot's good through the corners, but just top speed isn't really where it's at, which isn't great for defending.
You wouldn't think straight line speed is that important here at Croft, but I suppose acceleration out of the tight corners is quite significant. It's a bit of a breakthrough result this for you, though, nonetheless, isn't it, really? You had those couple of 3rd places earlier in the season, and actually you're not a million miles back in the championship. Are you still thinking about points, or are you just going for the best results you can get each week?
Well, to be honest, my kit arrived about a week before the first race. So the goal was always top 12 and just go for the reverse grid, which is kind of, we've done all right. I've always been there or thereabouts. Just a bit of an incident at Brands and same at Snet when we were kind of top 5. But yeah, when you don't have the overall pace, I think going for the championships may be a little bit enthusiastic, especially as doing well in the second race. They go to every race with ballast at the minute, which isn't handy when you're probably a little bit slower to start with.
15 kilos on the car for this weekend, of course. You'll be carrying perhaps a little bit more for Silverstone in a week's time. There's only 3 corners at Silverstone, though, so it might not hold you back too much.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Plus, I've been to Silverstone in real life, whereas Croft was a totally new one for me on virtual and real world. So, yeah, hopefully got a bit of an advantage there and can get on the pace a little bit quicker. Looking forward to it.
Max, huge congratulations. A brilliant battle there between you and Senna. Well done on 2nd place.
Perfect, thank you, cheers.
Max Goff in 2nd place then, and let's now try and have a word with the man who beat him. Senna, your first podium of the season, and you do it in style with a race win, but it wasn't one of those typical sort of reverse grid races where you start at the front and just disappear into the distance. You had to fight for that one.
Yeah, so yeah, it's a great result. Starting 6th, I think I took my time and just really picked them off one by one. I knew I had the pace on Max. It was just a case of biding my time and making sure I did it where and make it stick. I got him going into Tower Bend, and then he got me going back in sunny out. So it was that was a good little battle. And then I kind of knew that he was strong into sunny, so I knew if I got him and got clear of him by that corner, then I would get home and drive for the win.
I mean, there was one moment where you ran side by side through the Jim Clark S's there. I mean, that takes not only supreme bravery, but also confidence in the other guy not to move over and have you off. So there's clearly some trust there between the two of you.
Yeah, no, I've had a couple of good races with Max, and you know, I know I can trust him. So yeah, we ran side by side, got the switch back on him out of tower rather than going in like I did previous. And I knew that if I did that, I could make the move stick. So it's great to get the MSL car on the podium and hopefully start really making a championship run now, because the first few meetings didn't really go my way. But you know, I've never really been out the top 10 in every single race. So long may that continue.
Yeah, but you've sort of answered my next question then already. A championship campaign is obviously something you're still considering, and you're not going to be carrying a huge amount more ballast, I don't think, into Silverstone. So how confident are you can build on this in a week's time?
Yeah, I mean, I did the same last year. I had a bit of a steady start, just learning the car and learning the sim racing world. And then, you know, towards the end of the season, I was leading the championship until the last round. So I don't see any reason why I can't do that. Obviously, there's a little bit more competition this year, and everyone's a bit more up to pace. But I'll see if I can try and topple Mike Epps, who's being the pace setter at the minute.
Yeah, that's not going to be an easy task, but we're looking forward to seeing if you or anyone else can achieve that. Senna, huge congratulations on the first win. A brilliant race to watch.
Cheers, thank you.
Well, there you have it then, David. We got there in the end. We heard from our 3 podium finishers after what was another really good race. I mean, there hasn't been a bad one, has there, so far, really? We're now 10 races in. Each and every one of them have produced lots of close racing, close finishes, and still, we're not really any the wiser as to who the strong championship favourite may be.
No, indeed. I suppose Mike Epps continues to look pretty strong, doesn't he, with the way that he keeps banking points, but it is very, very impressive indeed. Thoughts about driver of the day? Mike Epps getting himself to the lead of the championship after all of this, but is it going to be Mike that is the driver of the day? I wonder. Maybe it's time, Andy, to have a word with Rich Hayden, the race director, and hear his thoughts.
Yeah, absolutely. Rich joins us now. Rich, another fantastic pair of races here at Croft. It's a tricky little circuit, isn't it? We didn't really know what to expect, but it's produced a heck of a show.
Absolutely, yeah, that's really shook things up a little bit, hasn't it?
We seem to say this after every weekend, really, don't we? I mean, it is remarkable the way the championship story keeps chopping and changing. You know, Mike Epps has a good weekend, and then the week after, maybe it's Charlie Oliver, then Jack Keithley, it was Callum last week, and maybe today we've seen Senna Proctor really stake his claim for being a championship contender.
Yeah, I mean, I know Mike has said previously about this ballast and how difficult it is for them, but as far as we're concerned, watching it and everybody at home that's watching it as well, it's great to see, and it's really making it hard for everybody to get to the front. So very, very pleased with how it's shaping up.
Yeah, absolutely. Your thoughts then for driver of the day? I mean, this question gets harder and harder to answer, I think, every week, doesn't it? What do you reckon? Who stood out to you today?
Oh, it really does get harder, and I'm sitting here looking at the results, and obviously from what I've seen back from the races, you know, Mike had a really good day. He's come out on top on points from the round. Senna, first win for him, really good race. Really pleased that he's got on to. I mean, the fact that I thought he was going to be on the podium and then he's ended up with a win was brilliant. Max Croft as well, great defending. Really good racing from Max Goff, and obviously Jack McIntyre, who's come in without in his second round without any ballast and has really thrown it to the front of the pack.
I think there's also an argument maybe for Dan Zelos. I mean, halfway around the first lap of the day, he was backwards at Tower, heading for almost certain non-finish, and yet here he is at the end of the day on the podium. It goes to show that you really can turn your day around, even if it doesn't start out well. This reversed grid and the ballast, it does mean that you can fight your way back into contention.
Absolutely, yeah, and you know, Dan did a really good job today. He had a great race in the minis earlier on. He was my driver of the day in race 1 for the minis. So again, exactly as you said, he's had a fantastic couple of races as well.
Yeah, honestly, they all deserve driver of the day just for the sheer entertainment they keep on putting on for us. It's been a real pleasure to be covering the championship. Rich, thank you for your thoughts. We'll hear from you again next week at Silverstone. David, what do you think? I mean, so many amazing moments throughout the course of the 2 races, so many amazing individual performances. It really is hard to pick one driver, isn't it?
It is, although I suspect, like I say, Mike Epps ought to be up there, because to do what he did in both races is very impressive. Max Goff, good. Pleased for Senna Proctor as well. There are lots of drivers, I think, though, that perhaps didn't show necessarily a great race, but good bits within both races, you know, and it's being that consistent driver to have the pace all the way through and indeed keep out of trouble all the way through that is starting to pay dividends. We've talked about drivers looking strong, but not for an entire race. They have a good first part or a middle part or a good end, but it's stringing it all together that seems to be the key. However, it's just as easy to talk about it in a virtual world as a real one. They're out there doing it, and they will do it in a week's time on the national circuit at Silverstone. For my money, one of the best circuits there is. I know drivers say it's boring because it's not got much to it, effectively only really 4 corners, but it's wide and it's easy to overtake, and its nature gives good racing. So we've had great racing today, we've had excellent racing all the way through the championship, but next weekend should be really good indeed. Then we go back to Silverstone on the international circuit a week later, and that will help us form a championship table going to Brands Hatch for the last 2 races on the 20th of March. So Mike Epps then is the man that will leave us the championship leader. Senna Proctor is our latest new winner. Mike Epps then, having had a chance now to have a look at the championship situation, clear of Max Goff, who's another one that worked his way up the order. Senna Proctor suddenly, from being 10th at the start of the day, is 3rd, ahead of Rob Butler and Robbie Stapleford. Callum Newsham did lead, he's now 6th, ahead of Jordan Brennan and Dave Marshall and Jack Heathley and Charlie Oliver. So it's a very jumbled order within the top 10. And it might get jumbled even more in a week's time. We'll see you next Saturday then at the Silverstone National Circuit as the MSL FastR Touring Car eSeries with Power Max Racing, powered by VRRC, continues. From Andy McEwan and David Addison at Croft, from today, goodbye.
Woo!
Between the two of them.
The inside of coats.
Martin gets too heavily involved.
And that's Whitehead and Coates.
Woo!